Hi, welcome to Python in the browser, building interactive documentation with MkDocs and JupyterLite. For those of you that may not know me, my name is Kassandra. My pronouns are she, her. I got my bachelor's in computer science. It was in Java, but I'm a self-taught Pythonista, and multiple other things that if you want to talk about later, see me after. So I personally do a lot to empower others, and my favorite one is to break down what I know into easy to understand bite-sized pieces. So here are some titles that I've held in my career, and what really lights me up about all of that, though, is developer advocacy. It is so awesome to see people's eyes just light up when they just get it. So prior speaking engagements, these are the ones that I've done in person. Coding Hour is something that I have done internally at Cisco for many years. And now I can gratefully and wonderfully say that I can now add PyTexas to my list of engagements. So initial housekeeping, you may have heard about the learning pyramid, but basically the more engaged that you are with your senses, hearing, sight, smell, taste, etc., the more likely you are to remember more of what you've learned for longer. So I do ask that you be a little engaged. I know it's Sunday morning and you had a late night hanging out with people, but just maybe a little bit forward, right? Add a little bit more energy, things like that. So in order to help you with this by creating a long-term memory and engaging your senses, we're going to play a little game, should you choose to accept. So this is a QR code, so go ahead and take your phones out if you'd like. I am the presenter that does have the contest, by the way, so this is what it's going to be. So the game is, how many PyTexas Easter eggs are there? I'm going to give you a quick second to your QR code, and then Jesse will also share the link for those who are virtual, who may not be able to get their phone on and work on there. So that QR code, and it should be this QR code, will take you to the rules. But first I want to talk about the prize. For those who do win, because I will have 2 winners, you can pick my brain for an hour on any of these topics or anything that just comes up. The rules, you have to be in our Discord server. That's the first thing to participate. There will be 2 winners, because I want to be fair. One will be for those who are here in person, and one will be for those who are virtual. The form, which will be this QR code, again, it's also through the rules that you have there that you will be able to click on if you have your laptop. Since we are on our last day, it will close at noon, and I'll wrap up with and let people know who the winners are after that. Full deck, everything that you see here, will be provided, so no reason to take screenshots, no reason to carry on with your phones, right? And those are the rules. So in the event of a tiebreaker, whoever gets the different Easter eggs will help to make that. So again, the logo that you see at the top, that you see everywhere else, right? That is one of the Easter eggs, and final numbers will be revealed inside the rules deck once that is over. Okay, so go ahead, if you are so inclined, to put your phones away, your screenshot tools away, and be engaged, right? Again, access to the deck will be provided at the end. So let's learn, right? Let's talk about using Python in your web browser. So a little bit of journey into how we got here. So again, I self-taught Python, and I took my notes, and I created a 3-day live bootcamp training for Python basics. Went to several locations for Cisco. It was great. A lot of people loved it. But there was one opportunity for growth that I didn't sit right with me. And that is a 3-day boot camp, in person or virtual, really scalable? Is that something that can happen without me? The answer is no. So how do you address something like that? Well, I came across something called Jupyter Notebooks. Anyone ever use Jupyter Notebooks? Yes, awesome. So for those of you who don't know what Jupyter Notebooks are, they are an open source application that allows you to do a lot of really cool things. I'll just leave it at that. You can read the text. It serves as an interactive computational thing, ideal for data science, et cetera, and for me, educational purposes. So great, I have found Jupyter Notebook. So that's going to be amazing. I then take that and create a 1-hour training for DevNet Create 2018. And yes, I did all Python basics in an hour. It was very fast. Don't try to do that for any students you might be trying to teach. But there was still another opportunity for growth. And that was the fact that where's the guidance? Where's the mentorship? Where's the ability to help really pinpoint someone's issues? Because I'm sure most of you, if not all of you in here, have struggled with trying to find a solution, maybe finding a Stack Overflow and no answer, right? So where's that guidance? Where's that nuance? So I set out on a journey. How can I do that? How can I bring that back into this particular training? And now, with Jupyter Notebooks, I was able to create a self-paced homework, as it were. So it's broken up into 3 weeks. After 1 week, you had homework relative to your topics, and it worked great. But once again, opportunity for growth. Very frustrating, right? And that opportunity for growth is, how do you deal with humans that miss critical steps in setting up their environment? Because for people who are new, who don't have a mentor, who are just trying to figure it all out, they get excited. They might miss that step. They may read it, not understand it, and try to just keep like, oh, to get to it later. So how do you avoid that particular issue when you're trying to help someone, or not help someone in that case? In comes PyTexas2025. It was my very first year in PyTexas. I just celebrated my annual, or my 1-year anniversary. And in that talk, or excuse me, at that conference, there was a talk that talks about one thing I will briefly gloss over in a few minutes. And the second thing was PyTexas itself. PyTexas, their websites, use MkDocs. So if you want to check out what they're doing, go to the PyTexas website. On the top right, you'll see the link to go, and you can check out the repos. Great. Awesome. So PyTexas 2025 was the reason we're here today. So before we go into the rest of the topics or the information here, let's talk about why. Why was this happening? So again, to recap, I'm not always able to host a live bootcamp. Students may not find getting started very easy. It requires installing things and hopefully teaching someone about setting up a virtual environment and how that works, and not getting too defeated if they can't get it to work right. And then students may miss important steps. So, solution, break down those walls, right? You got to break down those walls from stopping people to get there, and that is with MkDocs and JupyterLite. So what is MkDocs? It's basically a simple, lightweight way to take a markdown file and create a static website from it. There is a lot of really cool features, and I will gloss over so many of them in this talk. So I highly suggest checking it out. So let's talk about JupyterLite, the second part of this. JupyterLite kind of has some foundational things, again, I'm going to briefly touch on. And again, PyTexas had a talk that talked about WebAssembly. So what's Pyodide? Pyodide is an open source project that allows you to execute Python code in your web browser, and all that stuff right there. And it allows you to run languages within your web browser at near native speeds without installing anything. Awesome. So here are some things that you can do with WebAssembly. For me, best part is the tutorials, right? But you can do all kinds of stuff with it. JupyterLite is basically the lab version of Jupyter Notebook, and it runs entirely in the browser from the ground up. You can use a lot about Jupyter Lab, just not everything, right? So you do want to make sure that you understand the differences before trying to use it, because you might be a little frustrated if it doesn't do what you want it to do. Here is a list of things, of the trade-offs between the two. I'll just kind of cover a few specific things here. So when to use JupyterLite? When you're teaching, you're doing demos, you have a small data set that you want to do computational things, right? If you want to do anything that has to do with large data sets or file system things, you're going to want to use regular Jupyter Notebook on your local machine. So here is a diagram of how it all works together. And now let's go and talking about setup. So I'm going to make some assumptions. You can read this later. It's also going to be available in the deck slides later. But based on those assumptions, we're going to go in and say, hey, you create your project. Blank project. You don't have to have a README in it. It'll create one as part of the process. And add CodeGuard to your project. Does anyone know what CodeGuard is? Awesome. OK, so CodeGuard was built by Cisco security team. It is completely open source. And if you are using AI, I highly suggest that you start using this. Why? Because as you're writing code and you're working with it and you're having it write code or doing reviews, it puts security guardrails around your code that's being written. Not only that, but they donated it to COSI, which is the Coalition for Secure AI. So this is an incredible tool, and it's open source. There's no reason not to use it unless you're not using AI. So, all right, so setup and virtual environment. So in your terminal, you'll run UV init, again, assuming you have installed UV already. This is the plain repo, and when you run UV init, this is what will show up. You'll then update your TOML name and description. I have tried to update the name before, and it failed, so I'm not sure why what I read said to do that, so I just leave it as the actual project name and then update the description. Could be user error, I don't know. Then you create your user environment. So you'll see here that from the init, the environment is created. It tells you how to activate it, and then voila, you are ready to go. So once you activate, I'm on Windows. If you're on Linux, Simulator or Google it. But from here, you'll just activate it, and then you'll be ready to actually code, which the first one is installing your packages. So first one is UV add MkDocs. I prefer to use UV add because I have personally had issues with UV pip install, but to each their own. So here you'll see that installs multiple different packages for dependencies of MkDocs. And then this is just a view to show, hey, sometimes it can be confusing if you use UV pip install. So once you have that, you will create your MkDocs instance. I'm going to show you two different ways to do this because this is the way that I found somehow through the documentation, and it's a little messy. So I want to show you how to get out of that if you don't like this and you kind of do this initially and forget. So MkDocs new, whatever you want to call it, doesn't have to be the same as your project name. And then what happens is it will create folders and files and README and other information for you to make your MkDocs site. So how do you get it in the root? You make it super. Basically, all that means is moving all the stuff from that folder that was just created and putting it up one level into the root. So from here to here, right? So the alternative, or suggested way of doing things, preferred probably, is simply to do MkDocs new and then period. The period indicates I want you to do all of your installs and whatever here in my current folder that I'm running you from. All right, so we set up our instance. We now need to build and test the site just to make sure that everything's kosher before we move forward. So you'll run these two lines of code. MkDocs build, you don't have to do -- clean. I just do it because it makes sure that it's a clean build. A clean build. And then MkDocs serve. That basically runs it as a local website so you can see how it works, you can interact with it, and make sure that it's doing what you expect. This is the bare basic. Here's the original creation. So you'll see on the left is the markdown file. On the right is the rendering of that markdown file, where all the hashtags, those are headers. You'll see the same one, H1, H2 in MkDocs. So next is to install JupyterLite. Here's the command. Here's what it installs. And key here, you do not need to have Jupyter installed on your machine to do this. You only need to have Jupyter installed if you want to edit or create Jupyter notebooks. So if someone makes the files for you and it's your job to make the site, great. This is all you have to do that. So then you run your build and you serve it. You configure your MkDocs YAML file and then do those things. So what is this file? This is the file that says, hey, this is what my site is. Here's the URL. Here's the repo URL. I'm not going to go into those. But the navigation is most important because that's what creates the menu at the top. It's what helps you to navigate with your web pages and some other stuff. Oh, yeah. So those two are the things I want to bring your eye to, because here you'll see the second menu at the top, which is notebook and root. That was the first arrow on top. The directory, when you hover over it, is the notebook and directory, which was the second arrow that I just showed you. So here's that root notebook. You can see that I ran it in the web browser, and it gave me 12. Same with this one, right? They're exactly the same, just different locations based on what you have in your MkDocs YAML file. All right. That's basically it. You have set up your initial MkDocs site, and you are ready to go with everything else. So you've set up your environment, and now it's time to set up your docs folder. Your docs folder is the default location, and there's some weird things you can do if you want to do other things. But your docs folder is where all of the other things will be that it pulls from to build that site. So here are some things that you need to consider when you're working on building out that YAML file. The first one I think is super cool. So how many of you have dealt with web pages where you've had to have multiple information on multiple pages? Great. Who would like to make sure you do that only one time, one update? Right. Snippets will let you do that. Okay, you can have a folder or whatever you want to place it, right, where these files are located, and you can pull sections of it or the full document and put it anywhere with a single line of code. It's pretty slick. So these are some questions to consider. And again, once you set it up, you'll run your build, deploy, and when you're ready to actually host it, if you just do MkDocs GH deploy, that will deploy it to GitHub pages. Super simple, easy. So there are 3 integration patterns to consider. This is the first one, my personal recommendation, but again, depends on what you're trying to accomplish. On the left-hand side, you'll see what came about from the navigation inside of the YAML file. On the right-hand side are the different headers within the Markdown file. And then in the middle is the actual Markdown file with the Jupyter notebook being rendered. In order to have this one, this is how you have to have it done. It has to be JupyterLite notebooks, and eventually with the path on it where the Markdown file is located. You'll notice that actually this is in the Markdown file, and it is HTML, right? So you are embedding an iframe to be able to show that notebook. Here's the second one. It is the Jupyter Lab portion. It says full features, but it's as full as it's going to allow you to have. And you'll see that it's just slightly different. It's where you can see everything within that folder of the file you're wanting to initially load. But just like the lab, you'll be able to click on all the ones, open them up, play around with it. In order to do that, instead of notebooks, it's got to be lab. The rest is all the same. And the third one is the tree or file browser. I don't know why you'd want to do it this way. Maybe you have a training or something. I would love to know any use cases if anybody wants to share afterwards. But the file tree browser, this is it. There's no location for your thing. It just says, hey, I want you to take this current location and show me the stuff inside that folder. All right, let's get into examples. So the first one is what I was talking about, my interactive basic bootcamp. And you'll see here that, again, that I've broken it down into 3 weeks. The structure for the YAML file shows that we have those in the navigation. Here's all of the other stuff that I have not covered and will briefly gloss over in a moment, but these are all the things that I had to install to make what I did work. Oh, it didn't start at the top. OK. This is a quote-unquote live demo, i.e. recorded. And you'll see that I'm on one of the notebooks. This will be a run, and if it errors out, you'll get the error, just like in a notebook, just like if you're running it locally. And if it works, you'll see that it works. On the others, you'll see here in tutorials, I like to make my tutorials as I learn things. And so from here, I wanted to show you kind of what you can do with MkDocs. So all of this fancy stuff, all those extra, that right there, that table, that stuff, those are all based on, and this right here is CSS. How to use CSS to make it look nice and pretty. So lots you can do. It's just like a regular website, just easier. Built-in search from MkDocs. And then in a moment, it'll click on the top right, which will be you'll see that it's the start of my repo name, and it'll take you to the repo itself for that particular item. All right, so here's the glossing over part. These are some of the modules that I've used for it. Again, in this deck, all of these are clickable, so you can go to those websites, learn more about them, use them if they interest you. Some more. All right, so my second example. So as you saw on, I think, the second slide, I'm a budding gardener. And I volunteer at my local community garden where more than 75% of what is grown is organic produce that we donate to local food pantries. And so a lot of what we do as gardeners and a lot of what we do as volunteers, there's a lot of room for growth that could be done easier, faster, potentially better as an app versus what we're currently doing. So I, being the developer that I am and learning about specification-driven development, I wanted to do that with this open source project. It is open source, and everything that I do build with it, I do live because I want it to be a teaching opportunity, not just for myself, but anybody else who's interested. And this is what it looks like on the back end for the navigation. I've added a few slides. I'm going to gloss over because we are running out of time, but this is the main page. You'll see that, like I said, it has the same things as before. This is a little bit different because I'm using some extra things that aren't necessarily in documentation, but I thought were really helpful. So this is the general design planning thing that I have. And in the Markdown files, you have something called metadata. In the YAML file, I don't remember if there's a dash line first or not, but there's metadata where it's like variable, colon, and then whatever it is. It can be text, it can be numbers, it can be some other stuff, I think. It can't be only text and numbers. And then at the bottom is like a dash line to indicate, hey, this is the end of my metadata. That metadata allows me to do what I'm about to share with you right now. So the critical phase 0 and approved, these are all pieces of metadata that my my Markdown files have, and that allow me to do some cool things. So number 1, general requirements. That's a link to a document, a Markdown file, that you can click on and see more. This is an image that I'm loading. It's for scope, and you can kind of see more about that if you're interested. And this part is that extra piece I was talking about. So you have the ability with MkDocs to run scripts at build time, and this was built at build time. I did not make this. This is not dynamic. I mean, kind of it is if you consider a script running on build time dynamic. But it took those Markdown files of all those specifications that I had and made basically a table with them in it. And you can see the priority from the metadata, you can see the doc number from the metadata, and the link, so that way you can go look at the actual file. Here's a reference guide so you can see what the metadata, okay, there it is. There is a line at the top. So here's an example of metadata. I have multiple different things that allow me to do more of what that I have showed you already. And again, another visual, pulling that information into a different way. So it's not necessarily to replace any ticketing system, but it was a way to show that you could, if you wanted to, create a ticketing system on MkDocs. More of the same. More of the same. Oh, this one is actually different. Let me go back a second. Nope, that's right. So you'll see that there are icons on the right-hand side of some of these. These are also based on metadata. So if something is approved, if something is still being edited, if it's already published, you'll be able to tell because of that metadata. Other things that you can check out to see what was used here. And now resources. We are coming to the end. So I had some acronyms in the beginning. If you want to know what they mean, that's what they mean. Bunch of additional resources to support you on your journey, including a couple of trainings that I have on this slide. But I want to go back here, and I want to say MkDocs is still available. It's open source. I can't imagine it ever going away. But the creators have gone, we're going to stop developing this, and we're going to focus on Zensicle. So it's basically MkDocs v2. I have not really dove too much into it, so I can't really share much more on that. But FYI, if you want to check it out. OK. So thank you. That was my presentation. I really appreciate your time today. And it is our 20th anniversary, so thank you so much for celebrating with us. And this is the QR code to my repo. It will take you to the MkDocs version of it, so I'll leave that up for just a quick second. Do we have any questions? And if you could, start the feedback form for me.
Brad, you've got the feedback. He's on it. Sweet, and I get to do the Q&A. So far, we've got 2 questions. Y'all can still continue to submit questions while I read. First one I have there, is there a way to take a Markdown code block and make a notebook out of it without having the IPyBnB file?
You want to take a Markdown file, a .md file, and put it into Jupyter Notebook without having the Jupyter Notebook?
A code block in a Markdown file, to make a notebook out of it without having to make them yeah, I'm not aware of any way to do that.
I'm not aware of that either. So Jupyter Notebook has nothing to do with MkDocs except that, hey, MkDocs is allowing you to be able to render the Jupyter Notebook inside of your browser.
Okay. The other question I got here, and this is a loaded one, contrast and compare JupyterLite versus Google Colab.
Can't do that, sorry. Can't talk about what you haven't touched, so.
Fair enough, okay. Well, Kassandra is gonna be around, so if you have questions, you should come and find her. She's sitting up at the front with us.
I am, and I will also see you next year at PyTexas 2027. Thank you. Woo-hoo.